Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, AKA Possibility Man. We are committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Today, our guest is Dr. Ted D. Barnett. He earned his undergraduate degree from Yale University, his medical degree from Tufts University. He has a specialty in diagnostic and vascular radiology. He has been in medical practice since 1986. He has a passion for a whole food plant-based nutrition program. He's the founder of the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. He is the pioneer of a 15-day jumpstart program that features a whole food plant-based nutrition program. He is affectionately known by his patients as Dr. Veggie, as well as around the World Wide Web. Dr. Veggie, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's really great to be here.
Okay, awesome.
I'm exhausted after that introduction.
Well, look, Dr. Veggie, you are an amazing physician and practitioner. I've spent some time with you in other forums, so I'm happy that you're here today. Hey, look, let me jump right into it. Now, I know that you've been in the whole food plant-based space for a long time. What was your catalyst? I mean, some people go to it for different reasons. What pointed you in this direction?
Well, this was back in the late 1980s, around 1990 or so. It kind of a bunch of different things kind of came together. So my wife and I got married in 1986. I finished my residency in 1984. We got married in 1986 and we moved up to Rochester, New York, where I began practicing just diagnostic radiology imaging, basically. And I've been observing people's chronic illness my entire medical career. I mean, one of the things that I deal with is vascular disease, and I do angioplasties and put stents in people. And so it never occurred to me that there was anything that we could do about that with diet or lifestyle. And in fact, I kind of always assumed, based on what I learned in medical school, that plaques, the things that plug up arteries, are basically made out of concrete. They're not going anywhere. Now, I hope nobody takes that out of context. I didn't say they are basically made out of concrete. What I said was, that's what I thought. Okay, they're not made out of concrete by any means. So my wife had become interested in going on a plant-based diet for actually ethical reasons. She was concerned about the animals, and we had discussions about that. And I care about animals a lot. I grew up, in the outdoors a lot, but my interest really was even at that time was global warming and the climate. And I said, well, from what I understand, eating a plant-based diet is better for the planet. Uses about 1/10 of the resources, doesn't generate nearly as much in the way of greenhouse gases. And, we're running out of places to grow food anyway. But I'm not going to do it if it's dangerous. And this sounds dangerous to me. I don't want to give up. My parents were smart people. They were feeding me all these animal products when I was growing up. They wouldn't have done that if it was the wrong thing. So I needed to learn more about it. And actually, I set the bar very low. I just said, okay, as long as whatever we come up with is as safe as the diet that I'm currently consuming, then I'll consider switching over. It doesn't have to be better or safer. It just has to be the same. Well, then I started studying it and reading about it, and I found out, wow, it's not just as safe, it's way better. It's way safer from a medical standpoint, from a health standpoint. It's just really a remarkable difference between what the standard American diet and what we recommend, which is the whole food plant-based diet. So then I read a book by Dean Ornish, who's a cardiologist in California, I read that book was published in 1990, and he was talking about the studies he had done, randomized controlled trials on actual people with heart disease. And what he did was he put them on basically a whole food plant-based diet. It's a little different from what you've learned from us, because back then there were some other things that we didn't know, but it's very close to what we currently advocate. And he did angiograms, the gold standard, right, on people at the beginning and then 1 year into it. And the amazing thing was these arteries were opening up. it turns out plaques are not made out of concrete. They're in a dynamic equilibrium with what's ever in your blood at the time. So if you're eating food that makes plaque, then your plaques are going to get bigger. If you're eating food that can help resorb plaque, then your plaque can get smaller. Most of these older plaques are never going to go away completely, but they're going to resorb enough so that your symptoms, your angina goes away, and you're no longer at risk of having a plaque rupture. So anyway, before I turn this back over to you, I just want to tell you I had this aha moment. I call it my sloping forehead moment. I'll turn sideways for that. Here we go, the sloping forehead.
Yeah.
And in this book, so this is a book about his research. There was a, the book was written for the lay people, and it was about, and I read his original articles as well, but what he talks about is how hard it is to get research dollars, any kind of funding for a study about lifestyle, because there's no money in it for any of these big corporations, right? The pharmaceutical companies, they're not interested in lifestyle, they're interested in drugs and things that they can sell you for a lot of money. So that's when I had my aha moment. I went, of course, that's why, why drugs are always going to win, because that's where the research is always going to be. So that was kind of the beginning. And in 1991, when we look back, that's officially when we made our transition. We had 2 little girls at the time. Nathaniel was born 2 years later. He's been this way since before birth, and he's like the healthiest person I know. Our little girls are healthy. They're all grown up now, and they're still doing the same thing. So that's kind of the beginning of it all.
Well, that's great. I was going to ask you, you've been powered by plants since 1990, and your children, and you're saying that they're pretty healthy, and you and your wife, relatively healthy?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're not on any medication. Not many people in their 60s, well, my wife just turned 70 actually. Not many people in America can state that they're not on any medication. I'm not, she's not. I run 3 miles every day, and I work out. So it's, and I'm still working.
Yeah, that's great. So we have known, from what you've said, you read Dr. Ornish, we have known, our society, the medical community, at least some people,
right,
that lifestyle made a difference since the 1990s. And what is your number one explanation as to why we haven't made a shift to more of us doing this? Is it the pharmaceuticals, or is it?
It's a great question. Well, first of all, we've known since way before the 1990s, actually. I mean, Dean Ornish didn't get this idea. He just said, I want to do some research on it. So, really, it goes back a long, long time. It's hard to say, how that's moved around. I mean, even Hippocrates talked about diet, right, 2,000 years ago. So, but yeah, the modern medical establishment has had a really hard time adopting this and adapting to it. I don't think there's any one evil force that we can put our finger on. There's not like one person or one company. It's the whole system that we live in. We believe, somehow we've come to believe that if high tech is better. So, I call myself the high tech doctor with low tech solutions, right? And I've realized over the years that people respect me more because of the things that I can do that are not as helpful to them, right? Yeah. Right? I can fix your artery with an angioplasty, but I can also fix it with broccoli. Well, it's more interesting to people that think about the high tech stuff. You think about any kind of television show that's about the excitement in medicine. There's, ER, there's stuff about, called ER, there's stuff about being in the operating room. There's nothing about prevention. That's just not that interesting. It's like watching grass grow.
Right.
It's like nothing happens. Yeah. Guess what? We put you on a great, we started you at birth on this really great diet, and guess what? You didn't get sick. Nothing happened. There's no story there.
Right. And just thinking back to my boyhood years, I'm in my late 60s as well. Before 1960, my mother, my grandmother knew something about, let's call it holistic medicine. They would get roots out of the grounds and make sassafras tea and other things, and we would get better, And right. Seemingly, after 1960, maybe in the 70s, a culture seemed to emerge about a pill or shot for whatever ails you. And that's the culture that I matured in. Is that about right? Is that the culture is this way?
I would say you're right. Yeah, I think absolutely. And insurance came along, and in some ways that made it trickier because insurance didn't want to cover things that hadn't been demonstrated in a randomized controlled trials, and what they consider to be science. But like I said, there's just so many things coming together, and then ultimately what happens is there is a problem with the system with money, because there's the guys in three-piece suits are being paid by the companies that make the expensive products. They're not being paid by the broccoli lobby or the kale lobby. So if I'm a doctor in a hospital, and this doesn't happen so much anymore because it's against the rules, but it used to be what they call detail men. They could come into the hospital and they could arrange to visit with you, the doctor, or come to your doctor's office, and they could give you free samples. They could tell you about this latest medication that was really great for your patients. And they would take you out to dinner, or maybe take you on golfing, or whatever. It just got to be kind of cozy, and it just got to be what everybody was doing.
Yeah.
And doctors, humans are social animals, and doctors are human, and we see everybody around us doing something. We figure, well, I guess that's what we should be doing.
Right. Yeah. So, and I love my doctors. I'm well doctored because I'm a muscular dystrophy patient.
Sure.
But at the same time, people have to be aware that there's certain rules in the medical world, such as, for example, you can tell us about this, the LD50. If a drug, people ask, is this drug approved by the FDA? Is it approved? And the assumption is, if it's FDA approved, that it must be good. Mm-hmm. And is that about, is that true? If it's FDA approved, that the drug or treatment must be a good one?
Well, it's like always, it's compared to what, right? So, I would not say that I'm an expert on FDA approval and how that process works. Okay. But I certainly can talk about what happened just recently with that Alzheimer's drug. That I'm not sure if you've heard about that, but there's an Alzheimer's drug that, well, let's back up for a second. Alzheimer's is it's a horrible disease. Once you get a diagnosis, it's inexorable. And you lose your mind, your memory, you're miserable, everybody around you is miserable, it's horrible, and then you die. Whatever, 5 to 10, 15 years, but it's not great. And so of course, anybody who can come up with a solution to this would be, it would be really wonderful if we could do that. So I think the company's name is Biogen. They came up with a drug that has a theoretical basis, because there's stuff that builds up in your brain called amyloid. And this drug is designed to remove the amyloid from your brain, and it builds up in people who have Alzheimer's disease. So this drug actually does remove the amyloid. It doesn't really help with symptoms, but it removes the amyloid. And there's very little benefit demonstrated. So the FDA actually did approve that drug, maybe in the last year or so. And I know that a couple of the people on the panel resigned because of that. Because they didn't really agree with approving the drug. And by the way, the drug's very expensive. It's like $1,000 a month. Wow. It's an injection. But Medicare just recently said they're not going to pay for it. So you can have something that's FDA approved, but Medicare doesn't have to pay for it. In fact, Medicare calculated it would be so expensive that everybody's premiums would have to go up a significant amount just for this one drug. And this is for a drug that doesn't cure you, and barely makes a difference in some people, and actually harms other people because it can cause swelling and brain bleeding. Yeah. So that's a really good example of something, the high tech, getting all the attention, when in fact we know that Alzheimer's, some people refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. You don't have to get it, right? It's diet and lifestyle related. We should be starting much earlier with people. To starting off on a healthy lifestyle and healthy diet, and which also prevents all the other things that are so harmful to people, diabetes and heart disease. So that's an example. Oh, and then, so there's an organization called the American Alzheimer's Association, and they have a budget. I'm not sure if I got their name right. I think that's right. But I know what their budget is. Their annual budget is, guess how much? It's $400 million, their annual budget. Okay. And they are a lobbying organization. And even though all the medical organizations out there, the AMA, various other, and most doctors say that was a good decision that Medicare is not going to pay for it, because it's just giving people false hope and it's costing the system a huge amount of money. Well, the Alzheimer's Association said, we're going to get all of our members to lobby and complain because that's just wrong. So you think about it, we have these lobbies for certain groups, but what about kids? I mean, right? Where are the lobbies for them? the ones who are just starting out in life, where there's actually a chance they may never get Alzheimer's if they're, you know, taught how to eat in the beginning. Where are the lobbies from them? So I do think there are systemic problems. It's not just in one place, though.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, and there's some wonderful tools in the medical field. I mean, you work with them as a diagnostic.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and whenever we go to a doctor or hospital, we see all of these little things. And so, so then the question occurs to me, all right, we have all of these gadgets. We can look inside. You can identify where the blockage is at. Are we winning the health care game, or are we losing? That is, are chronic diseases at bay because of our tools today, or are we still in this fight, this war?
That's a really interesting question. You know, you can do some thought experiments. You can say, like, well, what if we just didn't have any healthcare system at all? What would the difference be? You know, what if we just had basic sanitation and we had good food, and we grew up in healthy environments where we could get outdoors and exercise? What would the difference, you know, how much would we gain by then putting in a healthcare system that would take care of us when we got sick? I don't know the answer. I think there would be obviously a significant gain. You know, I'm always very grateful for modern dentistry.
Of course.
Right? I probably would be dead if because I have a lot of bad teeth, and my dentist has kept me going as far as that goes. I don't even think about my mouth. So there's lots of benefits to modern medicine. The problem is it's sort of I think it's the emphasis and the balance.
Yeah.
You know, people think, well, if it costs more, it must be better, right? And if it's complicated, it must be better. If it's hard to understand, it must be better. So when we're training medical students, you know, they have to spend they burn the midnight oil learning about, you know, acid-base theory and how to keep your kidneys functioning and dialysis and all that stuff, which is complicated, and the calculations are difficult, and you have to be really smart to understand it. But they're not that interested in what would really help people at this point, which would be like teaching them how to cook.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. You know, medicine will keep you alive for sure for a long time. But at what cost? My mother lived to be 91, Dr. Veggie. And I'll tell you what, she had a tray of pills. I mean, a whole tray of pills that she took every day. And she would go to one doctor who would switch her into something else. And, you know, she lived, but she spent most of her time in a chair because she just couldn't do very well. I think it must be a better way. I don't know.
Sure. How old was she when she started? When she started to get sick, how old do you think she was?
Well, actually, I think she started in her late 70s. So she had about a decade of the medicine, what I call the medicine treadmill. You know, but she also loved life though. She didn't want to die. She said like she would brush it out. Anyway, that's another story. I digress. But look, I want to get back to this. So we've talked about the problem in a sense, and I think everyone knows about the problem. So let me ask you, what is lifestyle nutrition? You know, the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. What is lifestyle medicine?
Sure, great question. So lifestyle medicine is the practice of evidence-based lifestyle treatments to treat chronic disease and often reverse it. And it's usually chronic disease. It doesn't have to be, but it's usually chronic disease. And what do we mean when we say chronic disease? Well, we're talking about those things that are not, as opposed to acute disease. So an acute disease would be a pneumonia, or an infection, something you could treat with antibiotics and it's over. Or a broken bone, something you got to go to get it fixed, you got to wear a cast, and then it's over. But a chronic disease is something that basically never goes away. It just keeps progressing. So the big examples in our culture are diabetes, heart disease, obesity. What are the other ones? Well, COPD, lung disease, that's from smoking. Cancer is considered a chronic disease, most of the time. It's not ever really cured. A few cancers are, but it's something that it requires ongoing treatment, basically indefinitely. And when you go to your doctor with a chronic disease, they never tell you, take this pill and you're going to be fine. They say, take this pill and you're going to be on something like this for the rest of your life. So it turns out that a lot of these things that we thought were, chronic and inevitable, inexorable, really aren't if treated with lifestyle. So there's basically 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. And now I'm going to put some pressure on myself and try to get them all right. Okay. And actually we've at Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, we've added 3 more pillars, which I'll tell you at the end.
Mhm.
But the 6 basic pillars are plant predominant diet, or what we teach, a whole food plant-based diet, restful sleep, avoiding toxins like tobacco and alcohol, stress management, good relationships, and physical activity, so exercise. And when I say physical activity or exercise, a lot of people get scared because I don't want to exercise. Well, you don't have to exercise. You just have to be in motion, you just have to be moving. So you look around the world at the blue zones where people tend to live to be 100. Those people are not actually, they're not going to the gym and exercise. They're just active all day long. They're hiking up and down the hills to visit their neighbors, all those things. And then the 3 that we've added, so that was 6, the 6 basic ones. If you go to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine website, you'll see those. If you go to our website, you'll see we have a wellness wheel, and there's 3 more that we've added with good reason. One is enjoying nature, so getting outdoors. The other is seeking joy. And the third is seeking meaning and purpose. And those 9 we think are kind of, the basics for a full happy life. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that we assess when we evaluate our patients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's take a look at a few of those, maybe a couple of those chronic diseases.
Sure.
And share with us if you've seen whether people have made progress. Let's take, for example, type 2 diabetes. Let's say that someone presents with that. They come to your program. Have you seen have they made any progress by following your program?
No, absolutely. And we're not the only ones who have success with this. When you go to a lifestyle medicine conference now, and we share these results with other doctors, they shake their head and say, yeah, sure, of course that's going to happen if you can get people to do this. When you go to a regular convention with doctors who haven't been exposed to this, they don't believe you. Mm-hmm. But eventually this switch will flip. And so you asked for an example. So we did have a gentleman come to us, it's about 2.5 years now. He came to us in September. He was a little overweight. He was not on any medication for diabetes. He was in his middle 60s, had just retired from being a school teacher. And his doctors said, you have a really bad case of diabetes and you need to go on medication now. And so I'll just give a little background here. Normal blood sugar is anything 100 or lower. And blood sugar over 120 is considered in the diabetic range. And then, people with really bad diabetes will end up with blood sugars 180, 200, 250, sometimes 300 or 400. And then those blood sugars tend to fluctuate during the day. And so it's a little hard to know how well controlled or how out of control somebody is, because it depends when you draw the blood for the blood sugar. But there's another measurement that we call hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C is nice because it's like a historical record of your blood sugars over the last 90 days. So a normal hemoglobin A1C is anything under 5.5. And then the higher your blood sugar is on a chronic basis over those last 90 days, the higher that number goes. It goes 6.0, 7.0, 8, 9, 10, 11, anything 12, anything over 6.0 is considered in the diabetic range. Well, this gentleman had a hemoglobin A1C of 12.6. That's really high. And means his average blood sugar was in the 300s for the last 3 months.
Wow.
So he did our jumpstart, and within 3 months of his hemoglobin A1C was 6.0. So he had just basically gotten out of the diabetes range. He was, right on the cusp there. And now with no treatment, no medication at all, his hemoglobin A1C is 5.4, and it's been that way for a couple of years.
Wow.
So if he goes to the doctor now, and he didn't tell the doctor, I used to have diabetes. The doctor would not say, you have diabetes. He's just basically cured. We call it remission because we think if he goes back to his old habits, he probably will get his diabetes back. But he basically is not faced with all those long-term consequences of having diabetes, and he's not taking any medication. And he's really happy.
That's incredible. Right? Oh my gosh. That's incredible there. So wow, you've seen diabetes go into remission. I'll use that word.
Sure.
That was a classic example. That's amazing. What about elevated cholesterol? Have you seen anything in that area?
Yeah, absolutely elevated cholesterol. And before I forget though, that's the same. So the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, that's his story. He used to have diabetes, right? And now he's I don't know if you've seen pictures of before and after. He looks really buff now, but before he was, your average marshmallow. And now
Wow.
he's,
That's incredible. I've heard a lot about him for sure.
he's great. He's
Yeah.
amazing. Anyway, you asked me about cholesterol.
Yes.
Sure. So cholesterol, which as everyone knows, is a risk factor for heart disease. Is a risk for heart disease. So there's all these treatments now to get your cholesterol down. Lipitor, other statins. There's even injectable statins that can cost up to $1,000 a month. And so lots of interest from the drug companies. And since we were talking about that before, I'll just explain. Drug companies are really interested in chronic illnesses because it's a very predictable revenue stream, right? Because people are going to be taking this stuff every day for the rest of their lives. So they love those kind of drugs. Anyway, the official recommendation is to get your total cholesterol under 200 and your LDL, the bad cholesterol, under 100. We at Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute feel that a better goal target is getting your total cholesterol under 150 and your LDL under 80. That's because in the Framingham Heart Study, which is this long ongoing study of people in Framingham, Massachusetts, really almost nobody had a heart attack if their numbers were under those. And so it always feels like a bit of a contest. We like to see which cohort is going to do the best when we have, because we do our jump starts every month. I know you're currently just finished one of our jump starts. So it's on average for people whose cholesterol is over 200, the average drop in 2 weeks is 44 points. So and our record cholesterol drop is a woman who came in with a total cholesterol of 299 on day 1. And on day 15, her total cholesterol was 149. It dropped 150 points.
Wow.
Which is kind of amazing. We don't see that in everybody. Obviously, she's our record, but it's not unusual in a group to see somebody's cholesterol drop 80 points. And we often see somebody whose cholesterol dropped around 100, but usually it's in the range of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 points that we'll see in a group of those people whose cholesterol started that high and they're trying to drop that number. So it really, really works as far as that goes. And that's where, remember at the beginning, I mentioned Dr. Ornish, and his goal is to get people to their heart disease under control and to stop having angina, having symptoms, and to reduce the risk of having a heart attack. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who published a little bit later, his diet is actually the one that we base our program on in the Jumpstart. It's a very low-fat, whole-food plant-based diet, or VLF-WF-PBD, and it's been demonstrated to basically halt the progression of heart disease, and in many people reverse heart disease, so that they no longer are having angina. They can get out and exercise. They don't have impotence anymore. They don't have the claudication, and they can actually get back to having a normal life. And it also reduces the risk of having an acute heart attack as well.
Wow, that's exciting. Wow. So look, why does a person's blood pressure go down from being on your program?
Good question. Well, first of all, let me just say it does go down. We know that. Okay. And the reason I will come up with some reasons, which I think are legitimate explanations. It happens because of the food, right? We know that. Why the food does that? Well, that's how people get their PhDs. They work out these, right? They work out their complicated mechanisms, and they may or may not be right. The current theory about why that works is because basically the things in what is part of the standard American diet, so white sugar, white flour, oils, those are toxic to the lining of the arteries, and the lining of the arteries is made up of these little cells called endothelial cells. It's the endothelium, and they're like this little cobblestone street inside your arteries. They're lining everything. There's actually like 60,000 miles of blood vessels in your body, and every single one of them is lined with these endothelial cells. And when you consume food, it gets into your gut and gets absorbed into your bloodstream, and immediately comes into contact with all those endothelial cells. The same thing happens when you smoke a cigarette or take something else into your lungs. It gets instantly into your bloodstream and affects those endothelial cells. The endothelial cells are responsible for the health of those blood vessels, the lining. They produce something called nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. It causes blood arteries to dilate and keep your blood pressure down. When they're in bad shape and your arteries are kind of constricted, then your heart has to pump harder to get the blood through your body. And so you have to have higher blood pressure for that to happen.
Wow.
It's actually a double-edged sword, because the fact that you have high blood pressure is bad for your arteries. Just having high blood pressure alone is harmful to the arteries. And the reason you have the high blood pressure often is because you've harmed your arteries in some other way with food or tobacco or whatever. That's also caused the arteries to become less compliant, less able to dilate.
Right.
That's the theory.
Right. I got
and it's probably, I think it's probably true.
Yeah.
It's probably right. But what I always try to emphasize to people is, even if we don't know the reason why something works, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned that I did go through the Jumpstart program, and I just want the audience to know that I did participate in a Jumpstart with you. And what really shocked me, I'm glad to tell you, I did not expect my blood pressure to go down that drastically. I mean, it really surprised me.
Really?
So, I mean, I had gone and I have been on blood pressure medicine before. And my blood pressure, I think the top number was in the 160s range, and my doctor freaked out and, got to get your blood pressure pills. But anyway, it began to go down, and but I've never had the blood pressure that I have now because of this program. Just really blew me away. So
wow,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So we know that a whole food plant-based program is good for one's health. Now, the question then people will ask is, what do I do? Now, I know that you teach what is called the self-determination theory. And that first element, I'm your student, you said,
sure.
You got to recognize your own autonomy. Right. And that's my decision to say, I want to improve my health. So let's say that a person wants to improve their health. What's the second element of this, or second component in this self-determination theory, and what do you teach them?
So the second component is competence. And so you said the first one is autonomy, and the second one is competence. And with competence, we are basically giving you the tools to do this, to basically follow through and know what to do. So that's ranging from knowing what food to buy in the store, to how to cook it when you get home, or what to do when you go to a restaurant, what kind of foods to order, and what to do when you're in social situations. So all of those kind of feed into competence. And humans are social animals, which is the third part, right? Relatedness. Yeah. But we'll get to that, I'm sure. Yeah. We need to recognize that, so that we can have the competence to push back a little bit when necessary. Okay. And my experience with teaching people how to eat a whole food plant-based diet, for the most part, people are pretty happy with it when they're at home and there's no one around. Yeah. The hard part, they say, is, well, no, I'm not gonna have any friends anymore. No one's gonna want to be with me, right? And then, what's magical, however, is how much influence people have on others. I know I'm wandering off here a little bit. So let's talk about the competence. So we do talk about, how to cook without oil. So we have videos on that, because people say, what, you don't cook with oil? Well, why would you cook with oil? If I sent you into the woods, would you find oil? No, you would find nuts and seeds and berries and roots, right? You're not going to find oil. But somehow oil is like this thing that everyone assumes is part of every meal. It's not, so we teach you how to cook without oil. We teach you how to, find all these great vegetables in the store, and what to do when you get home. Can they be frozen? Yes, they can be frozen. Can they be canned? Well, canned is not as good, but that's okay. And so, we have those discussions as part of this. On the day number 8, we have this really fun thing. We have a virtual potluck, which we used to be, when we ran this program in our office before the pandemic, we actually had a real potluck. People would bring food into the office and we would share recipes, and people would have to talk about it. So they were developing competence in preparing food, or at least finding someone who could prepare their food for them. So that's what the competence is about, learning how to do that. Right.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and you mentioned eating out and peer pressure, not peer pressure, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I've discovered, and this is a part of this autonomy, you told me if this is a part of autonomy to you, is that we can be influential. For example, when I started your program, I sent my doctor a note through my chart, and I sent him a link to your website, right? So look, I'm starting this program. He's back, so he became aware and he responded, oh, that's great. Okay, thanks for letting me know. And then along the way, when I wanted him to do my blood work, I said, look, I want to share my results with my team. None of us knew what was going to happen. He said, okay, they scheduled it. So then he got the results. Yeah. And then finally, when I took my blood pressure, I sent him the result. He responded. And then when I graduated from the program, I sent him a copy of my certificate. So here's my point, Dr. Veggie. Now he knows that if a patient presents with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, he has another option if the patient wants another option. So I think I was exercising my agency and my autonomy in that case to influence him should he be open to it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. That's a great story. That might be part of relatedness, but it doesn't matter. It's all right. Because the relatedness, right? But what I wanted to just say is your doctor now has another option.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just as you pointed out. And I think that's so important. One of the things I've been fighting this battle now since 2015 when we started Rochester Lifestyle Medicine. And we started out running different kinds of programs. We finally realized what we needed was a program that was really easy for doctors to order and for people to sign up for. So we made it as inexpensive as possible. It's only $199 for the 7 visits, 2 weeks, or 18 days actually. And it's something that your doctor can tell another patient about and say, look, just go to their website and sign up.
Yeah.
And that's all he has to do, right? And come back to me in a couple of weeks and tell me how it was, right?
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, because now we have people have another option. I didn't know actually before I came across Jumpstart. I didn't know there was not. I was looking for another option. I just didn't know. Now I know. Now my doctor knows. Let me ask you, in this third element, and I find this interesting. I want to tease around this in a moment. The third element is relatedness, or I would say relationships or connections, human connections. Why is that important?
That's so interesting. So a little bit of background. So self-determination theory was actually developed here in Rochester, New York. It's just a strange coincidence at the University of Rochester. And I didn't know anything about it until my partner in this, Dr. Susan Friedman, actually produced a poster for a conference that we went to. And where she described this program that we used to teach before the pandemic called, what's it called? It's called the Plant-Based Diet, Eating for Happiness and Health. We stopped teaching it 2 years ago, and it was accredited for 12 hours of credit for doctors, but it was taken mostly by people from the general public. So it was a 6-week program. We met once a week for 2.25 hours. And we had over 900 people take it. She basically, in this poster that we presented at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which actually won an award, she described this program and how it was based on self-determination theory. And I said, Susan, what is self-determination theory? I didn't know I was basing it on that. And she said, well, you didn't know, but you were. And so the third part, so the first part is autonomy. You're there because you're a grown-up and you get to do what you want, and you're there, you're doing it on purpose, and you've agreed to do it. The competence part is you learned how to do it, and you've become, you've developed some skills. It's not that hard, but you've developed certain skills so you can do it. And then the relatedness part, the third part, relatedness is things that are outside of yourself. And you actually made a good list there. It's everything outside of yourself. So it's your friends, it's your relatives, it's society at large, it's the planet, and the fact that what we're doing is good for the planet because we're not consuming products that are harmful and producing all these greenhouse gases. And in fact, so that's I was going to go somewhere else, but I'll get there later.
Okay. I get this feeling, and I'm going to use a phrase here to describe what I've learned from Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, is that you all are concerned about holistic living. That is the whole person, and not just the person's symptoms, and symptom treatment for the person's well-being. Am I taking this farther than you would want?
No, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, if you think about it, would you rather have like perfect numbers? So your doctor says you're completely healthy, your blood pressure is perfect, your weight is perfect, all your numbers are great, and you're miserable.
Yeah.
Okay. Or would you rather be really, really happy and have terrible numbers? I think most of us would choose, I'd rather be happy.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's both. It's very much both.
Yeah, because I think, your numbers will improve also if you're happy. As your stress level goes down, your numbers go down as well.
That's right.
Yeah. It is a holistic approach to life. And you can't get that from a pill, can you? You can't get holistic living from a pill or from a shot.
Right.
This is surely lifestyle. Look, I would like to know a little bit about your team.
Sure.
That is the people associated with the Lifestyle Medicine Institute in Rochester. I've had some experience with them, but I would like you to tell our audience about this team and what you all try to do together.
Yeah, so I just love my team. I mean, it's really kind of amazing. We're all passion and mission driven. We all really believe in what we're doing. We're not making nearly as much money as we could in some other field, and obviously, so my wife and I basically started this back in 2015. We're volunteers. We don't get paid for what we do. I've been working a long time as a physician, and we've saved up enough. And I keep reading that more money doesn't make you happy. Once you've reached a certain level, right, and your basic needs are taken care of, having more money is not going to make you happier.
Right.
So I get that. We do pay our staff. So we have 6 full-time staff. And you've met Bob Franke a lot. He's the director of the Jumpstart program. He's about 60 years old. One thing I've noticed is there's a lot of really good people in their 50s and early 60s out there who've had a career and now really want to do something to help the world, and whatever that is. And anyway, Bob actually, in his one of the jobs he held in the past, he worked for a long time with Bloomberg. What's Bloomberg's first name? Steve? No.
I don't recall his first name, but yeah, I know you're talking.
Yeah, right. It'll come to me anyway. So the Bloomberg magazine, and there's actually this Bloomberg device that for stock investors that has been around since I think the 90s. And Bob Franke was involved in the software development for that. He was very much involved in that. And then he actually was helped raise their daughter at home while his wife worked, and then he came to work for us. And their daughter's in law school now, so they did okay. And and he's just a bulldog. He's like, so Carol and I basically we don't count the hours. We're just doing this all the time because we're passionate about it. And Bob is the same way. He's on salary. He doesn't keep track of his time. If he did, we couldn't afford him. But he's very dedicated to helping the people in our programs, and he has the bigger vision of how this can help the earth itself. Susan Friedman, who's a professor of medicine at the University of Rochester, she's a geriatrician, and she has 3 boys who are all college age now, and she publishes like crazy. So she's the one who gives us sort of the scientific basis of what we do. There's a recent white paper about geriatrics that was produced by the American Geriatric Society, AGS. She was the lead author on that. So she's well known nationally for the publications that she does. Then we have, gosh, you want me to go through the whole list here? So,
just as many as you want to, but it's
Yeah,
such
right.
a great team. And,
Yeah.
what I want people to see is that it's not just you, but you have surrounded yourself
Absolutely.
with
Right.
a team.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And I should just mention our director of operations, Maria Duerst, is amazing. She's also in her middle 50s, and she's a cancer survivor. And she went on a whole food plant-based diet and has been doing incredibly well. And she used to work in low-income medical center in Rochester, so as the director of their nonprofit. And so she came to work with us, and she has so much knowledge about the healthcare system and just the nitty gritty about how to bill for the things that doctors need to be able to bill for to make lifestyle medicine a practical career choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just a very powerful team, I think, and so much dedication. I can't, and then we have Beth and Brian and Austin. So they're just fantastic.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So
and then and then of course the facilitators, right?
Yes.
They're not full-time, they don't work full-time with us, but you've already met Bobby and Kim, and well, Bobby has another job. Kim is more full-time with us, and they are there when you guys are having your discussions. Right. And leading those discussions, and they're living the life as well.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one thing I like about Bob. I've never met him in person, but on video. Right. He has gone through this himself. He has experienced the power of a whole food plant-based diet, and he's there helping us. That's just amazing, incredible. All right, so now I've already mentioned, and I'm getting at the end, but I just want to get into this as well. The Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute is connected. I mean, there are other programs in addition to Jumpstart. For example, I've learned, just going at your website, I've learned about CHIPS. What is that? What is CHIPS?
So it's CHIP.
CHIP.
That's okay. It stands for the Complete Health Improvement Program. It used to actually stand for Cardiac Health Improvement Program, but then they realized that it helps everything. So, because it's basically what we teach. It's been around since for about 30 years. It's the sort of the grandparent of lifestyle medicine programs, and it's the first program that was actually certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and it was developed by Dr. Hans Deal out in Loma Linda, California. A lot of these things are come out of Loma Linda, the home of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in this country, or I'm not sure it's the home, but it's where a lot of the Seventh-day Adventists live, and Loma Linda University is Seventh-day Adventist. And so he got this idea back in the 90s. Well, if all this chronic illness could be treated just with lifestyle, why don't we try it? So he did it. And so it's 18 sessions. Each session is 2 hours. You can run it once a week for 18 weeks, or we run it twice a week for 9 weeks. So we actually started out running CHIP. That was how Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute got its start, is running the CHIP program. And what I tell people about CHIP is it's like getting kids into the bathtub. You can't get them in, and then you can't get them out.
Wow.
So,
that's great. That's great.
Right. And that's what it is. So that was one of the reasons we came up with our Jumpstart program, is because I think it appeals to people who say, you know what, I'm not sure I really want to do this, but it's only 2 weeks. Right. And we tell people, look, you're a grown-up. You can do anything for 2 weeks. Right. Give it a try, see what happens. And luckily, most people have such incredible changes in their labs and how they feel in those 2 weeks that they're persuaded in a very short period of time. I mean, like you, right? Yeah. So that's the CHIP program. The other one you mentioned is called LIFT, and that's the second program that was certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine in this country. And that meets once a week for 10 weeks, and it's 1 hour per session. And that actually covers all the bases of lifestyle medicine. So everything I mentioned: sleep, exercise, stress, family relations, all those things, that gets covered in LIFT, and in a really beautiful way, and in much less investment of time. So I love that program, and we run that pretty much continuously now. And then Jumpstart, the program that we developed, was the third program in this country that was certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And we had to jump through some hoops and over some hurdles. We had to get published. So that was where Dr. Susan Friedman came in. We were able to get 2 articles published, and that was how we met the requirement. We just were certified last fall in November, I guess October, and then you found out about us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gosh, I hate to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
In this country, and people view this from around the world, but in the United States, there is a population, let's say, African Americans. Many are faced with, with chronic diseases, and I'm wondering, why hasn't anyone focused this type of program, lifestyle medicine, to help improve the life chances of people, not only just African Americans, people who seem to be, larger numbers percentage-wise of chronic diseases?
Sure.
Or is that happening? I don't know.
It's happening now. It's happening now. You know, it's challenging because, you know, humans are social animals, as we've discussed. You know, I can't just march into an African American community and tell people that, well, this is what you should be eating, right? I'm not the right person for that. And there's actually an interesting documentary called it's called The Hidden Vegan. Is it the Hidden Vegan? It's the something. It's the hidden. I think it's called The Hidden Vegan, and it's about actually how veganism has been a part of the African American community, but very few people knew about it or know about it. Oh boy, I wish I'd looked up my names before I came here. But who's the woman? She wrote a book called By Any Greens Necessary. Anyway, the author of By Any Greens Necessary. She's an African American woman. She's beautiful, and she will when she talks, and she's in her 50s now. As a daughter, when she talks about what it was like to go to vegan society meetings, she would show up and people would say, "Oh, it's so great that you're here," meaning like somebody, right? And she would say, "What do you mean? I've been doing this longer than you have."
Yeah.
So it's complicated, but you know, there are definitely African American physicians now who advocate this. You know, and I think it's important for people to hear from other people who look more like them, right? So Dr. Milton Mills in Washington, I'll get you in touch with him. He's amazing. There's Dexter Sherney, who's a former president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He's African American. Kim Williams, a cardiologist out in Chicago. There's a bunch of docs now, and now we have Eric Adams, right? Yeah. And Eric Adams is like the best example out there. He's the mayor of New York City, you know, and he's talking about plant-based diet, you know, for their schools. It's great. So yeah, we're getting there. And I think there's going to be, you know, you just have to reach a tipping point, right? It's the wave. The wave is crashing on the beach actually now, I think, and we've hit that tipping point. The whole idea that somehow it's genetic, that, you know, well, my mother had, you know, diabetes, and my father had diabetes, and my dog had diabetes. Wait a minute, you know, it's in our family, right? It's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, many writers are saying that our genes are not our destiny. That's right. For sure. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so looking, you know, let's say you're on the beach, you're looking out on the horizon. What's next for you? What's next for Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute? What's extend your vision for us.
All right. Well, I wish I knew. Predicting the future is always challenging. But for one thing, we really would like to reach a lot more people with our Jumpstart. We've designed it to be very scalable. So as you've seen, you know, we do it on Zoom. I mean, that was the silver lining of the epidemic, right? The pandemic. We do it on Zoom. We use the Google Classroom. So these things are very scalable. We have a lot of people lined up to be facilitators who they're not as busy as they could be. So right now we see on average about 50 people a month. We'd like to see hundreds of people a month. The other thing that we're doing is we're developing a new, and I hesitate to even talk about this, but a new alumni system, okay? Because people need support afterwards. And part of that alumni system, we're gonna have to develop a whole new forum, a kind of a Facebook-like environment. And I don't want to jinx this, but my goal is to have a Facebook-like environment that's based on the principles of positive psychology, just like our LIFT program. The LIFT program is based on positive psychology. And, you know, Darren Morton developed the LIFT program. He is based that on positive psychology, and the sort of the father of positive psychology is a guy named Martin Seligman. And the idea is we're not talking about illness, we're talking about happiness. Yeah. And you asked earlier about you know, what does it mean, you know, holistic? And what I said was, you know, the point here is to be happy, to have a happy, fulfilled life. It's not to have great numbers, right? The point is to live a long, healthy life and then die all of a sudden. Just keel over, right?
Yeah, I think you're the first person I heard to use the phrase "die healthy." Die healthy.
Oh, okay, right, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome.
So our vision is to reach a lot more people, because I think that's what we need to do. Because right now, you know, there's 330 million people in this country. We've only reached, you know, a few thousand at this point.
Understood. Understood. Yeah. Well, Dr. Veggie, thank you for your time today. This was amazing. You run an amazing program, a great staff, and I appreciate having you in the podcast today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been so much
Okay.
fun getting to know you.
Okay. Well, you have been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Our guest today has been Dr. Ted Barnett, AKA Dr. Veggie. Dr. Veggie, once again, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.